help me welcome Tracy Abbott.
Where's my smile? Okay. So how many of you have heard the term, the tail wagging the dog? Well, several years ago, I was told to stop being the tail, okay? At the time, I thought I knew what that meant. I knew it was something negative. You know, my brother was kind of getting on me about my crazy life. And I just thought, oh, he's usually right, so sure, I'll stop. I didn't really understand it. So I recently looked it up and what the definition was, and I was surprised. Wag the dog is the act of creating a diversion from a damaging issue. A small and seemingly unimportant entity, the tail, controls a bigger, more important one, which is the dog. Wow. My fear of everything in life created this persona of control, the tail, that kept growing over time, not allowing the more important one, which is Jesus Christ, to take over. So guess what? I think at that point, Jesus decided, you know, she's still not getting it. And I used to call them 2x4s that would hit me over the head. And I'd say, God, how many more am I going to get, right? And I'd managed to always get through them. But he decided the only way she's ever going to get the message is if we hit her all at once. Because one at a time, she conquers. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those pretty significant, I call traumas in my life. And I know for a fact, had they happened by themselves, I would have kept going. So I look back now and realize the only reason I'm where I am today is because he decided he'd had enough and he really needed to get to me. So the first one was, I got a call from my doctor and he said, well, Tracy, your biopsy came back and you have malignant melanoma. I immediately found myself floating above my body. There was no way this was really happening because I had finally stopped worrying about getting malignant melanoma. I had been through this routine so many times. I've had 25 to 30 moles removed over the years. And for so long, I would wait for those calls. Oh, it's good, it's good, it's good. And finally, I was so busy and I knew I was doing what the doctor said. Well, you see, melanoma is the result of past behavior. Back when you were young and irresponsible and you got a few too many bad burns. So I knew no matter how much sunscreen I wore, it didn't matter. Yeah, I wouldn't get the basal cell, but I couldn't prevent melanoma from showing up. I had just been lucky that these other moles had never come back this way. The time had finally come and I felt completely helpless and desperate. I could not control this outcome. While this was going on, I had to face a crisis at work. I was experiencing a situation where I could not influence or hope for the good to outweigh the bad. My boss was on a mission to get rid of me because I would not comply with unethical behavior that he was expecting of his team. I'd been in so many difficult situations in my career with my job, and I would wait them out, and it would work. I would go through a crazy time, I would be stressed, but it was always just wait it out. Your manager will change, something will happen, and you'll move on. Well, this wasn't happening here. I was the breadwinner, and I could not afford to lose my job. I knew what happened to people who were put on performance plans. Their reputation was tainted, and in the IT industry, it didn't matter. I worked for a 50,000 person company. They would know. Why did she leave after 16 years? I was exhausted and devastated. I was so angry that the bad guys were finally going to win. All my tactics that I used in the past weren't going to work. As the tail, I was losing control. I just wasn't sure how to let go. And if that wasn't enough, something wasn't right, and I had been feeling something internal for a long time. I was searching for answers from God, from trusted companions, from health practitioners, and it didn't matter how hard I prayed, how much yoga I did. My feelings of despair were increasing, and I couldn't figure it out. And that was my job. I gotta figure this out, because I gotta fix it. One morning on the way to the airport, it's about 6 a.m., I ended up 10 exits past, and I was lost. And I travel every week, and I had no idea where I was. And I broke down, and I was scared. I was like, I just blacked out. And what is happening, Tracy? And I broke down, and I was crying, and I had no idea what was wrong. I knew I had to get a grip once again. Tracy, you gotta get on that plane. You gotta go make your flight. You've got meetings all over the country. What is wrong with you? I made the flight, but I knew if I took 3 hours, I still didn't come up with an answer. I was like, Tracy, you can't stop crying. And there is no emotion in business. And I worked for a very male-dominated company. I cried twice in 16 years and was actually made fun of for it, because I worked with all men. And I thought, how are you going to do this? And yeah, I talked to God, please God, help me. But I was so crazed, I never had time to wait for an answer. It was just, would you just help me? Okay, I just need help, and I would just move on to the next thing. You see, for several months while this was all going on, the cancer and the job, I had been part of a group therapy counseling group that was virtual, it was online, and it was all about healing, because I was determined to heal myself. And this was just another thing I was going to try, because nothing else was working. One night, the topic was about dealing with your past hurts. And one thing the counselor said that obviously struck a chord was whether you remember them or not. And I thought, well, that's weird, okay? And I knew I had some past hurts. My dad was a functioning alcoholic. We had a massively dysfunctional family. So I knew I had past hurts that I could work on. I had my little checklist that I was going to do. But when he said that you know of or you don't, my whole body started shaking. Within minutes, I found myself sobbing like a 5-year-old little girl, and I noticed the difference. It wasn't the same crying that I did in the car on the way to the airport. I sounded like a 5-year-old. My chest was pounding, and I was scared, and I thought something really serious is happening here, and I don't know what to do. I want to run away. All of a sudden, I saw Jesus in front of me, and in his arms was a little girl. She was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl, and she was in his arms, and she was hanging on for dear life. And Jesus said to her, "You're going to be safe. You don't need to worry anymore, and your dad's not going to hurt you ever again." And I stood there as the adult, and I thought, oh my God, it hit me like a tidal wave that I had been sexually abused by my own father. There I was, 47 years old. And I felt like my entire life had been shattered into a million pieces. You see, I was super close to my dad. I was the envy of 6 of my siblings for having the closest relationship with our father. And not to mention I was the youngest and I was the most spoiled. I got the most time with him. Isn't that great, right? That's what I thought. Up until that point, I wagged the dog because I was diverting from this bigger issue, the abuse. An issue I never knew I carried up until that point. It was time to give the dog control. And at that time, I had no idea how to do that. I was a mess. And I was hiding this from everyone. Somehow, I didn't tell my husband, I didn't tell my children. I told one of my brothers. And I thought, how am I going to work? It was getting worse at work. They were not letting up. And I thought, I'm gonna lose my job, and I'm having a breakdown here, and I don't want anybody to know. Because once again, I gotta do this myself. I had always had a relationship with God, and a very devout one. Anybody who knew me, up until then, would say, oh, she's on the right path. And I thought I was. I was devout. And he had come through for me, so I could count, here's what he's done. What I controlled that relationship. And I realized, wow, Tracy, you didn't let him control it. He's the dog. I was the tail, and I was determined to control everything. So I took a medical leave of absence, and the stress of doing that, I had to turn it over to him, because I didn't want anybody to know why is Tracy leaving? What's happening? What's wrong with her? Do you have cancer? She must have cancer. Right? I had to remove myself, and I had to come up with a story. And then I thought, no, I don't. I don't know anybody anything. It's time to take care of me. The smartest thing I did was I went on a silent retreat. 5 days. And at that moment is when I broke. And I was on my knees for almost 5 straight days, begging God to let me in. He was already. It was more let go of these chains that I've had around myself. He was there as he always had been. He wanted me to be free from the pain of the abuse and finally become the child he created me to be. For the first time in my life, I truly felt his presence and protection. The vision of Jesus holding me in his arms, it returned, but this time, instead of fear, I felt peace. I realized I had the courage to face these new realities as long as I had him. I felt hope. Over time, I noticed a significant change in me. I ruled by peace instead of fear. I craved silence instead of noise. I now understand, and I understood then, that the truth really does set you free. I'd always heard that phrase, a million times, and I just like, yeah, sure. But I felt the bricks that were tied around my feet go away. Unfortunately, I wasn't the only victim of abuse at the hands of my father. And as more truth is revealed, there is a part of me that wants to run in fear. But now I run to the Lord in prayer. Some days it's every 5 to 10 minutes. But I am comforted deeply by Isaiah 41:13. For I am the Lord your God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you. When I ask myself still the question of why, I am reminded, to this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example, that you should follow in his footsteps. I'd like to end today with a poem that I wrote upon finding this new relationship with God. I shed the anchors and the bricks. They are filled with anger, hatred, and silence. I give them up to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I am lighter. I am brighter. I can breathe again. I am no longer afraid of the pain. Their light is amidst the pain. It is okay. I feel safe. With them in my heart, no one can hurt me. it.